Shah here, founder of Wall Street Mastermind. Really excited to be here with you guys today. And today we have Archit on with us. Archit is one of our students who recently just finished going through the summer 2025 recruiting process. Um, Obviously, just like it always is, it was quite the journey. And glad to say that he was able to come out the other side with an offer. And we just wanted to get him to come on here and talk about his journey a little bit, share any insights that he may have picked up along the way. And hopefully his story inspires you guys and also, helps you with your own recruiting process as well. So with that said, Archie, I want to, first of all, thank you for being here with us today. And if you don't mind, uh, help us kick things off by just introducing yourself real quick and
Yeah,
telling our audience a little bit about you.
yeah. So my name is Archit. I'm currently attending the University of Maryland. I'm studying math and finance. I really wanted to do IB from probably the start of college, and been recruiting since the start of sophomore year. And the whole sophomore year ended. Throughout sophomore summer, I did not get any opportunities.
Hmm.
That's when my dad discovered Wall Street Mastermind, and got me connected with Sam. And from there, like really, like it really got the ball rolling, and ended up I at the start of junior year, I got an offer, so it was really cool.
That's awesome. I actually didn't
Yeah,
know that. So it was your dad that found us, not you.
yeah, it was my dad because he
Oh.
probably saw my frustration. But yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
awesome. So he just
yeah,
like decided to go out and do some research for you on his own.
yeah.
That's really going above and beyond because usually I find that students find us on their own and then they talk to us and then they have to go then like tell their parents about us. And then their parents are like,
No,
what the heck is Wall Street Mastermind? And like, I guess for you, it was the other way around.
no, it's funny because I think my dad like really liked. I think on your guys' websites, on Wall Street Mastermind website, like there's a lot of these interviews up, and I think my dad like really liked that, I guess, and that's
Hmm.
how he kind of wanted me to join it. And then from there, I think you connected us with Abu, and then me, my dad, and Abu had a discussion, and I really liked that. And then obviously, there was some follow-up conversation. But what really like sold us, it was like it's not just like kind of a course, but it's a community, and that was probably the best part about it because it's like you can see into what everyone else is thinking, kind
Yeah.
of use everyone else as a resource, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's the really cool part. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. I'm sure we'll dive into all that. And so
Yeah.
I guess before we do, let's start with the outcome. So, what was the offer that you got? And let's
Yeah.
start there. Yeah.
Yeah, so I got the summer 2025 internship at Stevens in the New York office. And Stevens is a really good middle market investment bank, and made me really happy. It was definitely after a lot of rejections for about a year. It's not nice, like it's not easy to kind of go through all those rejection emails, but finally
Yeah.
seeing, going through the whole process, it's very nice. And Stevens was kind of comprehensive in the fact that they had three interviews previously, and then another interview, and then a super day. So
Hmm.
it was a kind of a long process, almost took about a month between start to finish. But it was really cool because I was actually in one of my classes in the business school, and I got a call, and luckily the caller ID said Stevens INC, or else I would have not picked it up. But I picked it up. I left class, I picked it up, and they gave me the offer, and it was really cool. So
That's
that's
awesome.
how I
I was
got
gonna ask,
that.
like, what did it feel like when you got the offer? I mean,
Yeah, it was like a massive weight lifted off. It was like like a lot of happiness. Finally done with the process. Finally coming out of it is very nice. Especially because it's only, I guess, like the harder it is, the sweeter it is at the end. So that was definitely it for me because I did not. It was not easy for me. It was not, a lot of rejection, a lot of like getting upset, a lot of like regrouping. Had to change all my answers up probably like a lot of times,
hmm.
relearn a lot of things. And like one thing I'll say about this is not like, it's not, if you just kind of just like, oh, just brush up over this, brush up over that, it's not really like that at all. It's you have to kind of make this kind of like your job, like a 9 to 5 job.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I realized, especially coming from the University of Maryland, which is not a target school by any means.
Hmm.
So the process is probably twice as hard.
For
And
sure.
yeah, so it was nice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's man, there's so many things I want to ask you from what you just said, but
Yeah.
let's Just go back to the beginning because, like, honestly, you haven't been Welsh Mastermind for that long. Like, I think you joined
Yes.
like end
It's
of
been two
July.
months. Yeah, yeah.
It's been 1.5
Yeah.
months, I think, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so obviously a lot has changed in just 1.5 months. But
yeah,
prior to that, sounds like you had already been recruiting for, I mean, since the beginning of sophomore year, you said, right? So
yeah,
it's basically like an entire school year, because you
yeah,
like
yeah,
towards the end of sophomore summer. So,
yeah.
um, what were some of the things that you were doing on your own prior to Wall Street Mastermind? Like, how were you going about recruiting? How did you prepare? How did you like figure out or learn what you were supposed to be doing? Because obviously, like you said, you go to a non-target school. I'm guessing, like most of our non-target school students, like there's not a ton of resources on campus or people you can ask questions to, or even like alumni that can help you, right? So, like, how did you go about doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I was doing a lot of the same things that you kind of get if you just search up like how to do a break into it or something like that, like networking emails, like brushing up on technicals, brushing up on behaviorals and all of that stuff, right? But clearly what that I got kind of the understanding is that's not enough. I'm missing something. And that frustration and that took me a while to conquer. That it was also kind of, I would say, like my ego where I had to kind of like get out of that and see that like, hey, I'm falling short. It's not just because I'm getting unlucky, it's because I'm doing something. Well, it's easy to say that you're falling short, you're just getting unlucky if it's just like if you just put effort for like just a month or 2 months. But I'd been doing this for a year, so clearly like I was putting in a lot of effort, but like it wasn't like fully going towards exactly what I should be doing.
Mm,
So and for me, like the main thing, like within 1.5 months, and that the program helped, and that's mainly because like there are a lot of like secrets that a lot of people in the community kind of know, like the right words, the right like phrasing, the right like kind of like formula on the resume. There's a lot of like these kind of things that like people brush past, but like clearly it's a big deal. And
mm,
I'll be completely honest, like I was one of those people. But like once you kind of like one, I guess like everyone in their IB journey will go through this kind of struggle. And I feel like they should, because at this point, that's like the only way you kind of learn. But like kind of having someone, having kind of like a mentor, having kind of like a coach to kind of go through that is amazing because like like the first thing I remember like that Sam said was like it will be hard work, right? Because many of these people are like, oh, it's just a formula, this, that, you join this immediate. No, it's not like that at all, right?
no.
So like um that's the main thing, right? Because like I feel like a lot of people will go through that and they should go through that because or else like they're not going to understand the true value. And I feel like especially for something like this, unless like your dad is an MD or something like that, the process for everyone is going to be like this.
Yeah.
And with this, there are like a couple of like secret formulas, a couple of secret things, a couple of phrasing, a couple of words, especially on the behaviorals. I feel like that's where I was really falling short on because that's how people kind of gauge your personality, gauge your fit within the company. Especially in my like, especially when I visited the offices, like one thing like I will say is that like 70% of the importance was on behavioral and fit. And like obviously you need to know technical, but at some point, like everyone knows that you know all the technicals. So like you just like kind of memorizing all the technicals, like it doesn't it's important, but like it only really matters if it's like, in my opinion, if it's like if two candidates are like just like very close, whoever answers the technical is better, then I think that works. But like the
Yeah.
only way you kind of grab people's attention, kind of like the way they kind of gauge their personality, because like in IB, like one thing like that when I visited their offices, they told me was like you'll be spending like 12, 13 hours a day with people. Like if you don't like them, they're not going to pick you. And like the only way
Yeah.
you kind of make them like you is by showing that you have a personality, showing that like um you can mesh well with others. And that's why I feel like behavioral is one thing that like the program definitely really 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 helped me on.
Yeah.
Kind of like I feel like especially you kind of helped me like dissect every answer kind of perfectly. There are so many things about myself that I didn't even showcase. Like I remember like while doing the behaviorals, I talked about like marching band, I talked about this and that, which I was not doing in the past at all. And I
Mm,
kind of made it like a story, and I feel like that was the important part about all of this
mm,
is kind of that story. Building that story is what really gets you to the end. And that's what I would focus on, and that's something that you guys specialize in. So yeah.
yeah. That's awesome. So sounds like in the beginning, then you're just like doing what most people would say you should do online, which I'm just guessing, but based on experience, it's like reading the 400 questions guide, And then people just say, yeah, send networking emails, try to get on calls, talk to bankers, but it's all like very high level, like
Yeah,
here's
you don't
what
know
you
what
should
exactly. Yeah,
do. Yeah. But then like the devil's in the details basically is like, sure, you're also getting on calls, and then all the students in Wall Street Matchmaker are also getting on calls, but then like the way you're executing those calls is like very different, or you get to like very different outcomes because
yeah.
seeing all the specifics basically.
Yeah, I guess like to use kind of like a basketball analogy, like you have a shooting coach. You say I have a shooting coach, somebody doesn't have a shooting coach. Even so both of them practice for 10 hours practicing free throws, but like obviously the person with the shooting coach will know the right technique. So
Right.
the end goal will come sooner. And versus the other person will like kind of be like empty calories or like empty effort. Or like
Yeah.
it's yeah, that's one thing. So
Yeah.
that'll definitely yeah.
I mean, just to take that even further, it's like you could also have a lot of different people coach you. Some people are like, oh, I'm just gonna get help from, the seniors in school who have already gone through recruiting once. Or alternatively, you could, work with one of our coaches who used to be the global head of recruiting at two different bulge bracket banks, and she can tell you
Yeah.
what stories to highlight. And that's like, do you want to learn jump shooting from Steph Curry, or do you want to learn jump shooting from like the guy at the YMCA? Like,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, yeah,
and,
that
and it's just not the
yeah.
same thing, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
and I think you brought up a really good point earlier, which is we're not saying that then everything's going to be like easy just because you're working with Wall Street Mastermind, or like then you're not going to have to
No.
work hard or whatever. But it's that for the same amount of effort that you're putting in, because you worked probably just as hard before you came in versus after you came in, your work ethic didn't change, right? But for the same amount of effort that you're putting in, like what kind of results are you getting, right?
Yeah.
And then also
Yeah.
like how fast can you get those results, and how fast you get the results matter because like when you're recruiting, not to keep using this basketball analogy, but like when you're recruiting, there is a shot clock, right? Like if the shot clock is like if the recruiting timeline ends and you still don't have an offer, then you won't have an offer, right? It's not like you have like
Yeah.
indefinite timeline to keep
Yeah.
going, keep trying, keep figuring it out. Like you got to get it in like a timely manner. And even for you, I'm sure you felt like, man, so many people I know already got offers like a long time ago, and I'm still
It was
going.
bad. Yeah, it was bad. Like all my roommates got it. Like it was bad. Everyone in my business school got one. Like even though it's not a lot, right? It hurts. And I'm kind of happy I went through that hurt because it's like it kind of lets you like come out way stronger. And the amount of effort I was putting in at the summer was a lot. Like it was, and that's like one thing, like it's not like a cheat code to it, right? That effort is there, but like what I didn't know was how to properly put that effort. And if I had known that sooner, maybe it would have been better. And for me, like I'm not gonna lie, like to use your shot clock analogy again, like it was almost a buzzer beater for me because like I got it at the start of junior year. And so yeah, and so yeah, so like that's why I will probably re-recruit again for full-time offers. I mean, there's no harm doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so definitely a cool experience.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so when you and your dad, so obviously you mentioned this earlier, your dad found Wall Street
Yeah,
Mine, then he brought it
yeah,
to you.
yeah,
Uh, what was your initial reaction? Because you mentioned something interesting earlier about kind of like letting go of your ego. Like, did you
yeah.
initially have some resistance to maybe getting help through a program like this, or like what? Walk me through like kind of how that all went down, I guess.
Yeah, you're completely right. Like it was not about the resistance, but it was more like why couldn't I do it alone, right? And the truth of the matter is like especially for this kind of thing, like there needs to be some luck involved, and I'm not gonna deny that. Obviously, like I was lucky, and but like the only way you kind of get that luck is you put boatloads of effort. And for me, like I wanted to do it alone. I wanted to do it alone. I wanted to do it alone, right? But like you never know for like all the people who did get an offer. Like a lot of people who like get an offer, I've understood in the future now that like they've had very very high familial connections, very very high. And for me, I was not like that. Like my parents are both not in the finance industry. They knew no one basically. And for me, it was I had to start from ground zero, and getting that help, right? That formula, that technique, like if you don't have it, I don't think it's very it's almost impossible to break in because it's like the bankers are very specific. Bankers only like certain things, like for example, like a resume, right? Like all the adjustments that had done like after the program versus before the program, like it was like how do I say it? Like it was very minute changes, right? But like the verbiage was different, the formatting was different, like the way I constructed the sentences. And one might think that like these things are not a big deal, but like they kind of are because like that's like the secret formula that's like kind of required. And without that, I mean, I don't know. Like I don't because I don't like I don't know, immediate rejection, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I
But
mean, I would say this, right? I think on this ego point, I want to kind of touch on that a little bit because I think it's very common. It's very normal, right?
yeah,
I think
yeah,
for a lot of students too who want to get into investment banking, usually, it takes a certain type of personality. You're probably very ambitious, type A. You've probably been, a high achiever for most, if not all of your life. And recruiting is, I think, first of all, starting out at the beginning of the recruiting process, most people are very optimistic about, their ability and their chance to get in. Uh,
yeah,
and as things happen and play out, and if they keep getting like these rejections over and over and over again, obviously that doubt starts to creep in, and you're like, I don't understand why it's not working. Like you've never experienced something this hard before, was like where I'm putting in all my effort and I'm still not getting the results I want. Like that never happened.
yeah,
Right. I think that's
yeah,
like very new for a lot of people. Um,
yeah.
and so like, I think the ego thing is like it's
It's probably the biggest thing for me. I'm not gonna lie, like growing like yeah,
but ego and confidence is like almost like
yeah,
two sides of a very similar coin, right?
yeah,
And like you do need to have confidence in yourself, but at the same time, also I think like setting aside your ego, what it really is like being able to admit that you
you
don't know
need help.
everything
Yeah,
or that you don't
yes,
know
yeah,
everything, and that's okay
yeah,
because
yeah,
most people don't know everything. Like there's a lot that we all don't know that we all can still
yeah,
learn. And I think I don't know why, but there is this sometimes people have this mentality of like, oh well, like if I didn't do it on my own, then I don't deserve it. Or if I didn't do it on my own, then like I didn't earn it or whatever. But like when you really think about that, it's like there's so many examples in life where that's not where we would never say that, right? Like for
yeah,
example, we just had the Paris Olympics, and you think about all the athletes that train their butts off to, compete at that level, and they all have coaches, they all have trainers, they all have people that
yeah,
with to help them get to like the pinnacle of their profession, right? And nobody's
yeah,
ever like, oh, what, like you got a coach that helped you along the way, like that, then you don't deserve it. It's like, no, like
yeah,
when you want to get to that level, like it's really, really hard to do that just on your own without any
yeah,
mentorship or anyone helping you. If you just want to play like, casually as an amateur at the YMC local YMCA, like you don't need that, right? But I always like compare working on Wall Street, like that is the big
the
leagues
NBA, yeah,
of finance, right?
yeah,
Like the percentage of college like NCAA athletes that make it to the pros, whether it's NBA or NFL or even WNBA for the girls out there, it's like between 1 to 1.5% every
yeah.
year.
It's 30 out of what 435 people every
Yeah,
year.
it's something super low, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then if you look at like some of the acceptance rates at these banks, like Goldman Sachs last year had uh over 300,000 applicants, and they
yeah.
hired less than 3,000 people,
Less than
right?
1%. Yeah,
Yeah, 0.9%. JP Morgan had over 400,000 applicants for internships, and they also I think hired around the same. It was like 3,000 or something like that. So it was like
yeah,
0.8%. The bottom line is when you look at the how selective it actually is,
yeah,
there is absolutely no shame in like getting help along the way. And then
Yeah,
also
of
it's like
course. Yeah.
the people that are like, oh, well, like, I did it all on my own. It's like, dude, everybody has some help along the way. It's
Yeah,
like,
I mean yeah, that's one thing I realized. Like anyone who says they did it alone, that's like a lie because it's like
who's paying for your
without,
college?
yeah, I
Like,
mean that's one. Yeah, that's
right?
one.
Like who's paying for your college? Like, unless you're paying your own way through college all by yourself and you never
Yeah,
had, any tutors, any teachers, any kind of person, like that's just not true. It's just like how much help and to what degree,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so
I
I think we really
mean,
have to
yeah,
like destigmatize this idea of like getting help. It's like it would be different if it was like, hey, there's this program, you sign up and you don't have to do any of the work and then you can just get in. Like, this is not like Rick Singer college admission scandal or something, right? But it's like you come in, you get help, but you still have to do all the work. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like I'm gonna work just as
yeah,
hard, but
yeah,
everybody has like a floor and a ceiling. And our job is to like, as your coaches, is to like raise your floor and ceiling so that when you put in the same amount of effort, like hopefully your new floor is like your old ceiling, and hopefully that's like you're getting an offer no matter what. It's just like
yeah,
how good of an offer is it going
yeah,
to be, right?
yeah,
Versus how many people do you think work their butts off, try to get into banking, and then don't get in at the end? Like
yeah. A
it's
lot.
a
Yeah,
lot, right? We
yeah,
can't sit here and say every single person that didn't get into banking is because they didn't try hard enough. That's
yeah,
just that's just not true. Right?
yeah,
So anyway, I think like um ego can be, sometimes the thing that really hurts us if you let it stand in your way of like achieving your goals, right? Which
yeah.
I think that's a really good point. Um, so
That
let's
too for me.
talk.
Like also, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. You go ahead.
No, no, no. What were you gonna say?
No, like growing up too, like that was kind of tough to kind of reset our mind because growing up, like I never took any like tutoring help. I never took any like SAT training, no like college admissions counseling, anything like that, right? But like this was a whole nother ball game, right? Because it's like this is the best of the best of the best. It's like so kind of the only way you kind of succeed is you need to start from fresh with all the right fundamentals
Yeah.
or else it's like empty calories where like it's not really contributing to building muscle or like doing anything. It's just like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and also I think like on that point, right? It's like I think a lot of people think of this as like a binary outcome, right? With like, oh, I like get in or I don't. But
yeah,
also like most of the time in life, the outcome is not binary. It's like along a spectrum, right? So I'm not saying that no one ever gets in without, having help. Like I'm sure some people do, right? They're like definitely the exception and not the rule. But even for those people, who's to say that they wouldn't have gotten an even better outcome for the same amount of effort if they had the
yeah,
help,
for sure. Yeah, yeah,
right? And so like I think
yeah,
not being so black or white about it, it's more like, hey, is your mentality just like I just want to get in, I don't care where it's at, or is your mentality like, yeah, I want to get in, but also like I want to get into the best bank that I can possibly get into. I don't want to like, leave anything
yeah,
on the table. That's a different
yeah,
mentality, right?
yeah,
That's why like actually like, I know you come from a non-target school, but like we have a lot of target school students that we work with. They're like they go to Warren, they go to Columbia, they go to these schools that have like, a ton of resources already. They have pretty good resumes, good GPA, good everything. Like they don't sometimes the students that come to us like don't even really necessarily need us to get into banking and they know that.
yeah,
That's a different mentality too, because we have like presidents of like the IB feeder club from Wharton, right? Like, and they don't want people to know that they're in Welsh management, but like they're like, yeah, don't tell anyone I'm here, but like, they want the help because they don't just want to get in. They're like, I want
yeah,
to get into, I want to got like Goldman Sachs sophomore summer, which maybe they wouldn't have
yeah,
gotten if they had just done it on their own, right? And so it's just like
yeah,
your career is so consequential that it's
yeah,
like if there's one thing that you're going to invest in and like kind of give it your all, like I think this would be it,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, the best part about it is not just like randos talking about this, right? This is like insiders of the industry who's been there, done that. So they
Yeah,
exactly know what's required. So that's the main thing, right? Giving that like you know exactly what is required to get that A report card, or exactly that formula sheet that like they evaluate you on, right? And
yeah,
that's knowing that takes a long way. No,
yeah,
like takes you a long way because it's like you're just like guessing half the time, like, oh, this is right, oh, that's right. But that like probability of you being wrong gets all out of that, gets, if you remove that, right,
Yeah.
all you have is good outcomes in the future. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So like let's talk a little bit about after you joined, right? Like so over the last, month and a half or so, um, what would you say are like the most impactful things that kind of like, change the outcome for you? Or what were some of the things that you did with us that maybe was like very different from how you were doing things when you were doing it on your own? There are like a
Yeah.
couple of those things that you can maybe just highlight.
It's number one is the small things. Like I used to not care about the small things, right?
Mm,
But the complacency about what I used to think about the small things, right? It's just a missed indentation. It's that verbiage. I don't. It's not that big of a deal in the long run. That is right.
mm,
Like just no way. Like why investment banking is that important. No, like these kind of things are like very, very, very important. That's like what I realized also in my super day interviews when I also when I visited their offices, like they inspect every word you say. Like my first interviewer, like he inspected every single word I said and asked like exactly about that story, right? As soon as I said that story, what I learned in the program is like saying that story that'll help kind of like break that ice and also build that rapport. And that's like the number one thing I thought the program was very good for, building that story, how to connect with people immediately. So you kind of have an edge on other applicants. And behaviorally, it's huge. Also, the small things, it's huge. Like that's what I realized. Like those small things that I used to think, they're not a big deal. They're a big deal. Like without that, like,
like what's an
because
example of that, for example? Like something you thought wasn't a big deal that
yeah, yeah, like the verbiage of the resume or like the gaps, like like one thing that you guys talk about is like having those two lines, like so like they fill the paper, like those kind of things, or else like
mm,
or like having like square bullets for a matter. Like I don't know how much that, like, you know what I'm saying, like all the small things, like all the indentations, and like having like a professional kind of reviewing that, and like having the right grammar, having the right sentence structure, having these kind of things that appeal to the bankers. All of these things matter. Number one, like that for that. Number two, also behaviorally, like having the right story, knowing when to pause, like when to like kind of speaking, like when to like properly like mention each things, when to like kind of make the interviewer feel like, oh, that's interesting about this person, instead of like, oh, every person is saying the same thing. When how to be unique, how to stand out, because as you said, like there are like 300 400,000 applicants applying for these things, right? And the
yeah,
probability is that, well, at least a few of them will say the same thing as you, but like how to like make it so unique that like, wow, that's a kind of a refresher, because those are the kind of things that help you stand out in the long run, right? Because like out of 400,000 people, it's extremely, extremely hard to kind of like be like, oh, this guy is unique, but like that's what it does.
yeah,
And for me, like that example was like I used to do marching band, and
yeah.
I used to never mention that because I used to be like, who mentions marching band in like an investment banking interview? But like that's something that I discovered that like was big, because everyone in my interviews were very, very interested in that, like immediately broke the ice. They kept asking follow-up questions about that. Also another thing, marching band was one, also like that, like I used to not mention like where I was from. Like one thing, like when someone told me, it was like, I used to like live in Connecticut before moving to Maryland, but like just mentioning the fact that you lived in Connecticut could go a long way, right? Because it's near the New York area. A lot of these bankers live in these New Jersey, Connecticut area, just like these kind of things that kind of help build that rapport immediately. Also, like kind of getting the handcrafted answers for like everything, right? Like it's not just like, oh, tell me about yourself, why investment banking, why this firm, but like um, even for the technicals, right? There's a big difference between somebody just like, it's very obvious when somebody just like memorizes walk me through a DCF versus someone who kind of actually knows it, right? Because like if someone's that, like how to kind of phrase that properly, how to make it look like you kind of know it, how to like kind of learn the deep knowledge behind that, instead of just like kind of memorizing, oh, you do this, you do that, you do that, and you just kind of say it. It's very obvious, because like what happened to me was like they asked me a question, and they used to ask like five follow-up questions about that question, about each technical question, right? And if you just had memorized that, there's no way they would immediately catch you. They'd be like, oh, you just memorized it from the 400 technical guide, right? Like these kind of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of the specificity, a lot of like these secret ingredients that you need that you would just not know unless like someone has been there, done that. Like that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's all great stuff. So how because obviously you have been recruiting for almost a year prior to working with us.
Yeah.
And you said you got a bunch of
Yeah.
interviews, you got a bunch of
Yeah.
rejections.
Yeah.
Like how many firms did you get rejected from before you came to us? Did you like did you like
Like,
do you even remember
uh,
or like
I mean,
ballpark?
all of them. Like, so how many ever there is, like all the namesake places, like all of them, all the bulge brackets, all the elite boutiques, most of the middle markets, like
You're talking
Guggenheim,
about like they just
Jefferies.
didn't even give you an interview, or some of them gave you
I didn't
interviews
even
too?
get an interview. I didn't get an interview. The only banks that I got an interview were from Guggenheim, or from Barclays. And those are the only two I actually got a formal interview from, and Bank of America. But that was it. And that's pretty bad, right? Because that's out of like what 30 banks, I'm getting like only 10% are even asking me for an interview. So if we just kind of like do the math on that, that's really bad. And that what that pointed to is like that means that my resume wasn't good back then, maybe, or like maybe the verbiage in their resume didn't catch anybody's attention, or their networking efforts or anything, something like that. But definitely like in a month and a half, I feel like I had a huge, huge, huge turnaround where like my whole mindset changed. The amount of effort I was putting into this was very high. Like over this, like I used to come back from my internship over the summer. I interned at Freddie Mac, and like I used to come back around 6, and around 7, I used to just do this until like for 4 or 5 hours every day, like
Wow.
watching all the videos, like kind of like right, like kind of like how do I say, constructing my answers, like that takes time. You can't just kind of like you can't just improv it, and
Right.
then and then practicing it in a way so it's very conversational, all of that, like
Yeah.
it takes a lot of reps doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow. So you would go work from like morning till 6, come back, and then an hour later, whatever, you eat dinner, take a break, and then you just like work all the way
Yeah.
until you have to go to sleep, and then you wake up and start all over again.
Yeah, like the amount of times that like I practiced my tell me about yourselves was like probably like over like a lot of times. Like I probably rehearsed it like 200 times, kind of perfect like when to pause, when to like I don't know, when to make it, like all that, all those kind of things, right? Like
Wow.
because behaviorally that's where I felt was short. But like what I learned was that I used to think like technicals were like the most important, but like they're really not like the most important at all. That's like what I realized from my interviewing. It's not important at all. It's behavioral fully. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, it's like you said, like I think you gotta check the box of doing a respectable job on the technicals, but you're right. If they don't like you, behaviorally, they won't care how good you are at technicals. And if they
yeah,
do like you behaviorally, a lot of times what I find is they'll even be willing to cut you more slack on the technical side, even if you like mess up a little bit or whatever, right? Because that's
yeah,
all stuff that they can teach you. But if they're gonna be spending more time with you than their wives and their girlfriends and whatever, like
yeah,
they don't really make sure that they don't,
yeah,
that they're not hiring someone that they don't get along with, right?
yeah. There's like a
Um,
whole science to this. There's like a whole science involved in this process that if you don't know the science involved, you don't know the fundamentals, the probability of succeeding is very, very low. And I can speak to this because like I was not succeeding.
yeah.
And kind of after I did start succeeding, right? Because as soon as my resume got updated, actually, it's funny enough, like the day I applied to Stevens, I got a first round interview invitation. So,
Wow.
and I used to think it's not a big deal, but really it is. All these small things, like not having complacency about it, kind of like perfecting that is what really I think led me to getting an offer finally.
That's awesome, man. But dude, I'm super
Yeah,
proud of you, man. Just like hearing your story of like how you grinded. Like, I don't think obviously there's a lot of students that come through the program and we see this all the time, but like the people that have the work ethic, it's really hard to not get results because like what we're trying to do, even though like there's a lot of like secrets that you won't intuitively know about or you haven't learned in school, like once we teach it to you, it's not like rocket science, right? Like we're not teaching you some like crazy thing. You don't have to be like a genius or whatever to like be able to do what we're asking you to do, but you do need to have a lot of work ethic. And like to your point, even like coming back from an internship at 6, working from like 7 to 11 or 7 to 12, like, every night, like that takes a lot of discipline. And a lot of people would just be like, oh, I come from work, I'm so tired. Oh, I'm just like watch some TV, whatever, Netflix, video games, this and that. And it's just like,
Yeah.
like there, not everyone sits there and practices the same answer 200 times,
Yeah.
right? But like, that's why like you deserve this, right? And like,
Yeah.
that's why also like the people say like, oh, like, if you get help, then you don't deserve it, you don't earn it. No,
Yeah.
it's still, it still depends on you showing up and you putting in the work, right? And like, as the athlete, you're still the one that has to go out and play the game and win the game,
Yeah.
on Sundays and whatever. And, the coaches
Yeah.
can only do so much to help you, but ultimately, like, you control your own destiny, right?
That's what my dad also said because we watch a lot of sports in the family, right? So he's like, Michael Phelps has a coach, Roger Federer has a coach, LeBron
Yeah,
James had a
exactly.
coach, like Steph Curry had a coach. Like it doesn't take away their greatness, but like it only kind of makes them greater because it makes them it makes them like show that like they're willing to take help and improve from it. And I would not have been able to do this progress with that process without help because like as I said, like there are so many things that the insiders know that's just not available in the internet, right? Because no one wants to like tell you, right? Because like I mean, just a basic human behavior is that like if you don't want to tell the secrets to anything, right? Because it's like you want to show people that like that you're the greatest, you're it. But like a lot of the secrets, without achieving that secrets, the probability of succeeding is very, very low. And
Yeah. And I also think that like when people say, oh, you could just find everything online, it's like,
it's not.
yes,
Yeah,
some information, like, sure, how do you do a DCF? Yes, you can find stuff like that online, right? But also, like, a lot of the a lot of it is not about like information anymore. Like people who think, oh, it's just about having access to information and that's the edge. That's not the edge. It's 2024. Like everybody has access to the same information. Everybody has Google or YouTube and whatever. It's like
yeah,
how to take that information and like put it into practice. And
yeah,
the practitioners that have actually done it, or even like, like we have coaches that used to be the global heads at these, top tier banks. I mean, for all of them, if we combine their experiences, over 70 years of experience leading recruiting at these places, they're in the room every single time there's a discussion about who gets offers and who don't. And like, why are we giving an offer to this guy? Why do we not like this person? They hear all the positive and negative feedback. Like that stuff is not online. You do not like, not everyone gets to be a fly on the wall and like hear how these decisions are made or whatever, right? And so being able to tap into that or being able to like ask these people questions and get feedback, and uh that's not just like information, that's like very proprietary, right?
yeah, yeah,
So I think yeah, that's anyway, I think I'm preaching to the choir here, but the last question that I want to ask you before because I don't want to take up too much of your time
yeah,
is
sure.
and you've obviously given a lot of this already along the way, but now that you're on the other side and you've gotten the offer, right? What's like the what single best piece of advice that you have for either people that are, maybe your year still recruiting right now, or maybe someone who's younger, like the class below you, they're about to start recruiting soon, right? But people who haven't come out the other side with this offer yet, like what's like the best piece of advice, or even something that you wish someone would have told you earlier, or maybe something that made a huge difference for you? Is there anything like that that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, like the number one thing for me is you need to shift your mindset. Like that's the biggest thing for me. Like I talked about like dropping your ego, all of that. But like I guess like number one thing is like each person has the same amount of time every day. But like I feel like whoever achieves more in that same amount of time will get to their goal faster. Right.
Mm.
Because this at the end of the day, it is a competition because there are only X amount of spots remaining. It's not like everyone who puts the effort like prolonged period of effort, like you're gonna get it because no, because application the spots will fill up and it's over. And that happened to me, right? Because I thought there was zero hope left. Like I didn't have anything until the start of junior year, which is late. It was extremely late. And obviously I got lucky, but like I feel like my mindset definitely changed. Like not leaving the small, don't think that all the small things don't matter. You don't have to rehearse it 100 times. You have to like you have to do mock interviews. You need to practice like all of this, but like it also all kind of comes down to one thing, at least in my opinion, is kind of shifting your mindset. And you have to first realize that you really, really want it, because unless you really, really want it, you're not gonna put that much effort. So it's like once you really, really want it, what everybody has X amount of hours. So like whoever achieves more in that X amount of hours every day, that adds up cumulatively, that adds up a lot. And I guess that's when you kind of lead to the success land. And at the end, like it feels great. Like as I said, like how I found out about it was I was in my 9 a.m., 9:30 class, and they called me. I left the class. It's a really, really cool feeling. Like once you hear it, it's probably like the happiest I've ever been. And I feel like everyone deserves that. So in order to like for that to happen, like you need to be willing to put the work in, or else it's not gonna happen. And
Yeah.
that's just the truth of the matter. There's no easy shortcut to this at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like being fiercely protective of your time, right? I think like
Yeah,
all the most successful people that I know do this religiously. Like they're very protective of their time because time is like literally the most valuable thing. Like once it's gone, you don't get it back, right? A lot of college students I find don't do this because I think the younger you are, the more you think like, oh, I still have a lot of time and I can like whatever, take my time with it. And what you spend time on is like your inputs determine your outputs. And if you really think about it, every single day, yes, there's 24 hours in a day, but you have to sleep. So like when you remove the amount of time that you're sleeping, each of us have about 1,000 minutes a day. That's what we all have. We have about 1,000 minutes a day when we're awake. And it's just like, what are you doing with those 1,000 units of time?
yeah,
That's like
yeah,
what do you turn that into, right? And so like um the thing you have to start doing, like, and most college students have never done this, is like you first have to, this is my advice for them, going piggybacking off yours now.
yeah, yeah,
You have to first audit your time. So like just for a week straight, like write down what you spend all of your time on. Just like use a calendar, like every time you do something, like block it off on a calendar so you can measure like how much time it was. And then after a week, you can go back and look at it. You can color code everything. You can organize it. It's like, okay, I spent this much time on work. I spent this much time studying. I spent this much time eating, this much time, whatever, playing video games, this much time watching TV, blah, 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 blah. And then like you can't improve what you don't measure, right? Once you actually can visualize that, oh, wow, I spent like 20 hours last week doing these things. And then like I only spent, I don't know, 2 hours prepping for interviews. Is like how much time you're spending on each thing will tell you what your priorities are. And then you got to ask yourself, it's like, what are my priorities and does this reflect that? Because when people say I don't really have time or I don't have time, it's not, you're not saying you don't have time, you're just saying you don't have time for that thing. Like that thing was not important enough to make it onto your list of priorities where it took up a part of the 1,000 minutes that you had in a day, right? Because you gave it away to other things that you deem to be more important, right? Now, obviously for you, like for you, getting this internship was the most important thing. That's why as soon as you get home
yeah,
from work, you spend all of your waking hours doing this, right? And that shows. So
yeah,
anyway, I think you're absolutely right. Like time management is actually a huge part of the recruiting game. The people that are really good at managing their time tend to do a lot better, and the people that aren't good at managing their time tend to not do well. That's like actually a very
yeah,
high correlation. We see that in the program all the time. So
yeah,
great piece of advice, man. Really appreciate that. So guys, look, for those of you that are kind of still with us, hopefully, you can relate to a lot of what we're saying here. Maybe you've been struggling on your own for a really long time now. Maybe you've also kind of let your ego get in the way up to this point. Maybe you're like, I gotta do this on my own. I like I'm embarrassed to get help, whatever. It's like, if that's you, I would just highly encourage you to like set that aside and really reframe your mindset. All the most successful people in the world have people helping them, have people in the
yeah,
corner behind the scenes. At least when you're talking about getting to like, the peak, like the pinnacle of whatever profession it is that you're pursuing, in this case, finance or investment banking or whatever, right? So if you want to kind of like max out on like the best outcome possible, like live up to your fullest potential, while understanding that you're still going to have to work extremely hard. This is not like a, cheat code or whatever where you can just like not try. It's like you're still going to put in just as much effort, but for
Yeah.
that same amount of effort, it's not going to go to waste and you're actually going to get results for it. Then I want to encourage you guys to reach out. You can, if you want to speak with our team, you can go to www.wallstreetmatchmind.com/apply. The street is abbreviated to ST. So it's wallstmatchmind.com/apply. And we look forward to talking to you. All right. So with that said, Archie, I want to thank you for
Sure. Yeah.
spending an hour of your day with us today and just talking about your journey. And I'm sure it's very inspiring for people. And even just hearing how hard you worked and how much you practiced your answers and how much you like never gave up. Because dude, I guarantee you, there's so many people that after 25 or 30 rejections or whatever, like they are just like ready to throw in the towel, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and you have to keep going, right? And so
Yeah.
anyway, I think your story is super inspiring and definitely respect you a ton for just how hard you worked in the program and how you showed up. And looking forward to seeing what you accomplish this coming summer at Stevens and even well beyond that as well. So
Got it. Yeah, for sure. I guess the one last thing, like for me, like all the people out there, like you guys have to like I guess like sit quietly by yourself for like 24 hours to just like really think if you really want this. Because like once you really decide that you want it, like you're gonna completely switch your approach into how you're gonna go after it. And that's exactly what I did. Like after all those rejections, right? I was like, I had like Freddie Mac gave me a return offer. It was very easy to throw in the towel, but like what like once you kind of like sit down and you're really like I really realized that like no, I don't want to do this. I want to do investment banking. I want to do investment banking. You kind of write that down and then your mindset fully changes and you'll be a completely different animal going forward. Yeah.
you fully committed. And
Yeah. Yeah.
honestly, like that is a lot of times like what separates the winners from the losers in life. It's like it's up here, right? And like
Yeah.
you could have taken the easy way out and just taken the
Yeah.
return offer from Freddie Mac or whatever, right? And like a lot of
Yeah.
people that like
Yeah.
that was probably very tempting and the thought crossed your mind, but like, but you,
Yeah.
but you didn't, right? And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
um, a lot of times, like when something is hard and it's uncomfortable, you have to lean into it because like nothing worth doing is easy. Like a lot of times, if
Yeah.
you're doing something that feels really hard, it actually just means that you're like on the right track. And then like the reason why you're going to win and be successful when other people aren't going to be is because other people are dropping out when they're going through that same those same feelings and same emotions.
Yeah.
You're the one that's leaning into it. That's how you're going
Yeah.
to, right?
Got it.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, we're getting like super philosophical about mindset
Yeah.
mentality, but like honestly, that's like half the
That's
battle.
like that's 90%. Yeah, that's like for me it was like majority it was that. Yeah.
Yeah, you
But
look at like the best athletes in the world. A lot of it is not because like, oh, they are more athletic than everyone else. Like there are a lot of really athletic people that don't make it to that level, and like a lot of it is up here.
yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, a lot of parallels between this and sports. Anyway, it's been really great talking to you, man. Super
Yeah.
appreciate you
Thank
coming
you,
on
Sam.
here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and if there's anything else that you need help with between now and your internship or even after your internship, if you do decide to recruit for full time, whatever happens, just don't be a stranger. So
Got it. Thank you, Sam. Have a
yeah,
nice day.
absolutely, man. You too.
Yeah, yep.
See ya.
Yep.